This video is sponsored by Dev Mountain. If you're interested in learning web development, iOS, or UX design, Dev Mountain is a 12-week design and development bootcamp intended to get you a full-time position in the industry. To learn more, visit devmountain.com or click the link in the description below. Hey, what's going on, guys? So in this project, we're going to be building a vanilla JavaScript book list so that we can add books and delete them. And we're not using any frameworks. We're not using jQuery or any libraries. It's just straight vanilla JavaScript. And we're actually going to write our code in an object-oriented fashion with classes using ES6 classes. So we'll have a book class because we're adding books here. We're going to have a UI class that has to do with displaying UI, doing things in the UI like alerts. We're also going to have a store class because we're saving our books to local storage in the browser. Okay, and just to give you an example of how this works, it's very simple. We'll just say book 1, author John Doe, and let's say whatever, just some number for the ISBN, and submit, and we get a little alert that says book added. You can see it gets added to the table down here. We can add another one. We'll say book 2, we'll say Jane Doe, some number, and submit, and that book gets added. Okay, and then we can go ahead and delete a book, and you see book removed, and the alert will go away after 3 seconds, and that's pretty much it. Now there's tons of talks about frameworks or tutorials on frameworks like React and Vue, but something like this, you really don't need a framework. It's very, very simple. You don't even need jQuery or a library or anything like that. We're just interacting with local storage where we're dealing with events, and of course we're going to be creating a couple classes. Now you could put each class in its own file, and you could use something like Webpack or Parcel to bring all your modules in, but we're just going to do everything in one app.js file just so we don't have to deal with any compiling or anything like that. So this should really sharpen your vanilla JavaScript skills, which are very important. You know, a lot of people jump into frameworks too early. So let's get started. I don't want to talk too much longer because this could be a long tutorial. But we're going to start off by just creating the UI, and I know it's just HTML and Bootstrap, but I like to do it start to finish. You know, I don't like to just jump in and say, and we're starting from here. I want to start with a clean slate. So index.html, app.js. Those are the only two files we need. We don't even need a style sheet because we're going to let Bootstrap do all the work for us. So let's go ahead and put in our boilerplate here, our head body tags, and for the title, I'm just going to say my book list. That's the name of the application. We'll say my book list app. And for Bootstrap, I'm actually going to use something called Bootswatch. So bootswatch.com, and there's a bunch of different themes here. What did I use? I used Yeti. So, and you can use a different one if you want, but I'm going to go to Yeti, download. I'm just going to grab the URL of this style sheet, and then we'll go ahead and put this in here. And the next thing we need is font awesome. So let's go to fontawesome.com, start using, and then we'll grab that style sheet here and put that right above Bootstrap. Okay, so we'll save that. Good. Now what I'm going to do is open this HTML file with Live Server, which is an extension that I'm using for VS Code. You can just click on this icon and search for Live Server if you want to use that, or you can just open it with your file system. Whoops, I already have something running on that port. 1 second, guys. I think it's CSS Sandbox. This is for my HTML CSS course that I'm creating. All right, so let's go ahead and open this up. So we just have a blank page here, and we're going to just quickly add the HTML. So I want a container around everything, and I'm going to add a class of mt-4 because it gives it margin top. It's just going to bring it down a little bit. And then inside there, let's have an h1. I'm going to give it a class of display-4, which is a Bootstrap class, and we're going to say my book list, but the word book I want to be a separate color, so I'm going to put a span around it with a class of text-primary, and these are just all Bootstrap classes. I do have a Bootstrap course on Udemy if you're interested in learning more about Bootstrap, but I'm just going to put that span around the word book. And let's see, right before that, inside the H1, right before the word my, I'm going to put the font awesome icon. So I'm going to do I with the class of, let's see, it was FA or FAS. We also want a class of FA dash open, or is it book dash open? All right. So let's go ahead and save that. There we go. Let's also add a text center class to the H1. So text center. There we go. And I also want the icon to have that primary color. So I'm going to also give the icon, where is it? A class of text primary, and save. There we go. Okay, so next thing we want to do under the H1 is put our form, and our form is going to have an ID of book-form. We're going to be using that in the JavaScript. We don't need an action. We're not actually submitting to a server or anything like that. And in our form here, let's do a form group class, and we'll have a label for the title. Okay, and then we'll have an input, and this input is going to have an ID of title. It's going to be type of text, and let's also add a class of form control. Okay, so if we save that, we get a nice little input. Now what I'm going to do is just copy the form group, this whole div right here. We'll just go ahead and copy that down twice, and the second one is going to be author. Okay, so I'm going to grab this for as well as this ID, just Control D, we'll do that, and then we'll change this to author. And let's see, we also have the ISBN number, and we'll grab these two, change them to ISBN. Okay, and then we need our button, so under this last form group, let's say input, let's give it a type of submit. And the value we'll say add book, and then let's give this a class, a couple bootstrap classes, btn primary, and btn block, which will make it reach all the way across, and save. There we go. So under the form here, we're going to have our table, and actually I want to give this table a class of table and a class of table dash striped. Okay, and then we're going to put in our headings, our table head. So let's put a T head, and inside here let's do a TR, a table row, and then we want our headings, so TH. The first one is going to be title, and we'll go ahead and copy that down 3 more times. We want title, author, and then we want our ISBN number. And then the last one is just going to be blank because that's where the delete button is going to go. It doesn't need an actual heading. So under the T head, we're going to have our T body, and this T body is going to have an ID of book-list because this is where we're going to insert all of our books, and we're going to do that using JavaScript. Okay, so that's the entire UI. We'll go ahead and save that. Actually, let's add one more class to the table to push it down a little bit. So MT margin top -5, that'll push it down a little bit. And then we need to, of course, include our app.js. So right here we'll say script source is going to be app.js. All right, so we should be all set to start on our JavaScript. All right, so we're going to jump into app.js, and I'm going to just kind of map everything out. So we're going to put comments where the classes and the events will go. And I did change the code up a bit from the course. So if you did take the course, you may notice some changes, especially with the UI class. Basically, I made all the methods static so that we don't have to instantiate the UI class. And I do have a tutorial on object-oriented programming in JavaScript, so basically ES6 classes. If you want to check that out, that's on YouTube. But yeah, we're going to just kind of put some comments in here. So we're going to have the book class, and the purpose of that, it just represents a book. So every time we create a book, it's going to instantiate a book object. We're going to have the UI class, and this is to handle UI tasks. So anything in the user interface, like when a book displays on in the list here, or removes, or we show an alert, that's going to be within the UI class. Then we're going to have the store class, which takes care of storage. So handles storage. In this case, it's local storage, which is within the browser. It doesn't go away when you refresh the page or leave the site or close the browser. It stays there until it's cleared. So then we're going to have some events. So we'll have an event to display books, and which means just show the books in the list here. We're going to have an event to add a book, and we're going to have an event to remove a book. And that's both in the UI and in storage, local storage. So let's start off by just creating a book class, and we're not going to need to use this class until we get to actually adding a book, but it's easy enough just to create. It's just going to have a constructor. So we'll say class book. We want our constructor, which is just a method that runs when we instantiate a book. It's going to take in all the fields, so title, author, and ISBN. And then we want to take those whatever's passed in as these parameters and assign it to the property of that object, and we do that using this, okay, the this keyword. So this dot title will then be set to whatever title's passed in. This dot author will be set to the author that's passed in, and then the ISBN. Okay, and that's all we should need for the book class, and we're not going to be using this for a little while. Now the UI class, let's say class UI, is going to have a few methods. We want display books, we have add book to list, we have remove book from list, we have, what else, alert, show alert. So stuff like that is going to be going on in the UI. Now I don't want to have to instantiate the UI class, so we're going to make all the methods static. So for instance, we're going to have a method called display books, and make sure you put the static keyword before it. Now ultimately we want to pull our books from local storage, but we're not dealing with that just yet, so I'm going to hard code. Actually, I'll just paste it in here. It's just a hard coded array of books, and I'm putting it in a variable called stored books. Okay, so let's just pretend that this is coming from local storage, and then we're going to create our books variable here and set that to stored books. All right, actually, you know what? We could just, no, we'll leave it like this. I don't want to put the actual array in books, because we'll just pretend that this is local storage. So const books equals stored books. Now what we want to do is loop through all the books that are in this array. Okay, they will be in local storage, but right now they're just hard-coded. We want to loop through them, and then we want to call the method add book to list in the UI class, because what that method does, it's responsible for adding the book to the list right here. So let's loop through. We'll say we'll use a for each, so we'll say books, because it is an array, so we can use the for each method. This takes in a function. You can do like function book like that, but I'm just going to use an arrow. So let's put in some parentheses here, say book. We'll use an arrow, and then we're just going to simply call UI dot add book to list. Okay, we're going to call that method. That doesn't exist just yet. And of course we want to pass in the book. Okay, so just to reiterate, we have this hard-coded data, this array. We're setting books to that array, then we're looping through, and then we're just calling a method on that book. Or I'm sorry, yeah, calling method and passing that book into it. So now let's create add book to list, and we want to actually make this static. And let's see. We need to add in book as a parameter here. So add book to list. Now, what's going to happen here is we're going to basically create the row to put into the T body here. So we need to grab onto this book list ID. So let's actually create a variable called list and set it to document dot. You could use get element by ID if you want, or query selector. Oops, query selector, and as an ID of book list. Okay, so we're grabbing onto that element in the DOM. Let me just close the sidebar up here. So we're grabbing onto that element. Now we want to create a table row element. Okay, we want to insert a TR tag into there. So I'm going to create a variable called row. I'm going to set it to document dot create element. Okay, just a standard JavaScript method to create a DOM element, and we want to create a TR. Okay, that's the tag we want. And then we want to add some HTML in there. We want to add the columns. So let's take that row and let's say inner HTML equals, and I'm going to set this to some backticks, okay, so that we can use variables inside this string, because we want to put our TDs in here. And for each one, we want to put a variable, and we want to grab the book, and then here I want the title as the first one. Because if we look at the HTML, we have title, author, ISBN, and then just the delete button. So I'm going to just copy this down 3 more times, and the second one is going to be the author. Okay, this one's going to be the ISBN, and then this is going to be the delete button. So let's put an A tag here, and it's not going to go anywhere. What we're going to do is just have a special class that we grab onto later on. But we also want the bootstrap classes to make it look good. So BTN danger will make it red, and BTN -SM will make it small, and then delete is the class that we want to grab onto later on. And then for the text, let's just put an X. Okay, now we have our list we grabbed from the DOM, and we created a new row that has all this stuff in it. Now we just need to append the row to the list. So to do that, all we have to do is call list.append child and pass in the row. Now all we have to do is call display books, and it'll take the books that we have here hard-coded. It's going to loop through them, and it's going to add each one to the list with this method here. So how do we call this? We want to do that right here in this event to display the books. So we're going to do document.addEventListener, and the event we want to listen for is DOM content loaded. Okay, so as soon as the DOM loads, then we want to call UI.display books. So let's go ahead and save this, and there we go. So now the books are being displayed. All right, now the next thing I want to do is I want to be able to submit the form and add a book to the list. Now we already have add book to list in our UI here, so we should be able to utilize this method again, not just with display books, but also when we actually click submit. So we need to handle collecting the data from the form, we need to handle instantiating a new book, and then calling that add to list method. So let's go down here and let's say document dot, we'll use query selector, and we want to grab the form, which has an ID of book-form, I believe. Let's just check that out. Book form right here. So we're grabbing that, and we're going to call add event listener because we want to listen for a submit on that form. And when that happens, then let's just put an arrow function with an event parameter here. And there's a few things we need to do. So one, we need to get form values. So let's create a variable for each one. We'll say title equals document dot, and let's do query selector. And the inputs all have IDs. So we have title, author, ISBN. So we want to grab onto that. So let's grab the ID of title. And since this is an input, we don't want the actual element, we want the value that's actually placed in it. So we want to add on dot value like that, not node value, just value. And then let's copy this down a few times, and this one here is going to be author, and we want to change the variable here to author. Let's change this to ISBN and ISBN. Alright, so we should be able to get these values. So once we get the values, we want to instantiate a book from this book class right here. Okay, and this isn't static, so we need to actually instantiate a book to add a book. So let's do instantiate book. So we'll say const book equals, and we want to do new book, and then pass in the values that we want, which are going to be from the form, from the fields above. So author, ISBN, and then you know what I'll do is just console log book. So let's save that. Let's go over here and let's open up our Chrome tools, and I need to keep this high because I know I'm being displayed down here somewhere. Let's say title book 1, author Brad, some number, and submit. Oh, I forgot. You see how it flashed real quick? Because this is a submit event, we need to prevent the default value, all right, or the default action of the form being submit. So let's say prevent actual submit. So we'll take that event parameter and we'll call prevent default. Okay, so let's try that again. Let's do book 1. All right, we'll go ahead and submit, and now you can see our book object. So this is coming from this right here. We instantiated a new book. It just looks like a regular object, but notice it's prefixed with book because that's the class that it uses. Okay, so good. So far, so good. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we need to add it to, let me close this up. We need to add it to our UI. Now remember, we already have that add book to list, right? So let's go right underneath. And let's say UI dot add book to list, and then simply pass in the book. So let's try it again. We'll say book. We already have 1 and 2 there, so we'll say 3. Author, we'll say, I don't know, Harry White. And let's add book, and there it goes. It gets added. So if I reload, it's going to go away because we haven't persisted it to local storage. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. We have a couple other things to do first. One of which is to clear our fields, because right now if we submit something, you see that as soon as we submit, this stuff stays here. I don't want that. I want this stuff to go away. So we're going to have a method called clear fields. So let's say clear fields, and that's going to be on the UI class like that. So let's go up and create that. So under the add book to list, which ends right here, we're going to say static clear fields. All right, and this is going to be pretty simple. All we have to do is grab each value and clear it. So let's do document dot query selector, and let's grab the title. And we just want to set the value, so we're going to say dot value and set that to nothing. And then we'll copy that down 2 more times, and we want to do the same with author and ISBN. So now when we go and we add something here, no, wait, why didn't that work? Oh, I forgot the number sign here. Didn't know what we meant. So now when I submit, notice that all the fields, all the text in the fields goes away. So next thing I want to work on is the, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do next. We could move on to the delete, or we could go to the validation and the alerts. So let's, you know what, let's do the delete, just so we get the functionality, the core functionality down of adding and removing books, and then we'll work on the I guess the luxury of validation and alerts and stuff like that. Now, this is something that it confused me in the beginning, and it seems to confuse a lot of people. Since we have multiple deletes here, delete links, we can't just target it for the event to add the click event, because it'll only delete the first one if we do that. We need to use something called event propagation, where we select something above it, like the book list, and then we target whatever is clicked inside of it, okay? And then we deal with it that way. So let me just show you. If we go document.query selector, and we want to select the book list, okay? So the ID of book dash list, which if we look, it's the right here, the T-body ID. And then we're going to add the event listener to that for the click. Okay, and then we'll have our function. And then what I'll do is I'm going to console log that event parameter, and then it has a target property. Now, if I open up my console here and I were to click on one of these, you'll see it'll actually give me what's clicked on. If I click on this, it'll give me the TD. Anything within this, it'll give me that, whatever that is. All right, so that's how we can actually target a certain element inside of the book list. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass this target into a method on the UI called delete book. All right, so let's go up here to the UI class. We'll go let's go above the clear fields, and let's do static delete book. And then I'm going to pass in whatever that target element is. Actually, we could use L. Makes a little more sense. All right, so we're going to target that. And then let's see. Yeah, so this is going to be pretty simple. We just need to make sure that what we click contains the class delete, because if you look at the button, or I should say the link, this is this, right? And we want to make sure it has this delete class before we do anything. So let's say if the element dot class list dot contains, okay, so this is how we can see if a class is included, and the class we want to look for is delete. Okay, if that's so, then we want to remove that, this whole thing. We don't want to remove just the link. That would be silly, because then we'd be left with the book. We would just remove that. So we actually want its parent, because its parent is going to be the whole row, right? So let's say we'll take our element and we'll say we want the parent element. And actually, wait a minute, let's take a look at the, yeah, we want the parent element of the parent element, because look, we're clicking the link. Its parent element would be this TD, right? We don't want to remove that, because again, we'd be stuck with the book still. We want the parent element of that, which would be the whole row, the TR, okay, with the TR right here. So we want to actually do parent element twice. And then we'll simply remove it from the DOM with remove. So let's save that, and let's go back and click one of these, and now we can remove them. All right. Now, if you were to target just the delete class, like down here, and say click and then remove it, whatever, it would only do the first one, because it's going to look for the first delete class and just remove it. What we did is event propagation, where we targeted the actual list, and then inside there we said, well, if it contains delete, then remove that whatever we click, okay? Or I'm sorry, remove the parent of whatever we click. So I hope that makes sense. And yes, vanilla JavaScript it's more difficult than to do it with a framework, but it's good to know this stuff. You want to know these types of methods. It sharpens your skills as a programmer in general. All right, so we can now add them to the UI. Where we haven't dealt with storage yet, but we can add to the UI. We can remove them. Before we go to storage, let's deal with validation and alerts. So we're going to go down to, let's see, where we add a book. And we're going to want to check for, we're going to want to make sure that all the fields are filled in. So let's see, before we instantiate a book. So I'm just going to go right here and say validate. And let's do a simple if statement here. I'm just going to check for all fields. So we'll say if title is equal to nothing, or author is equal to nothing, not and, we want or, ISBN is equal to nothing, then we're going to want to show an alert. Now for right now I'm going to put in a simple JavaScript alert. Just say please fill in all fields, and then we'll do an else. So if it passes, then we'll move on and do this. So let's copy that, paste that in here. All right, so let's try that out. Now, if I were to submit this, we get please fill in all fields. Even if I have, 2 out of the 3, still we need to have everything. Then it works. All right, now we don't want to use that shitty JavaScript alert. We want it to have, we want it inside the UI. So we want that nice Bootstrap alert danger class and stuff like that. So what we'll do is create a special method in our UI class called show alert. So let's go right above clear fields, and let's say static show alert. All right, now show alert is going to have a couple properties, because we need, for one, the message, right? We need the actual text. And then we also want a class name, because we want to style it. We want it red if it's an error. We want it green if it's just a regular, info alert or whatever, success message. So we're gonna build this div from scratch. Notice we don't have a placeholder in our HTML for the alert. We're gonna build it from scratch and insert it right into the UI. So first thing we'll do is create a div. So let's say const div. And we'll set that to document.create element. We want to create a div. Okay, and just to show you guys the way that Bootstrap alerts, or the way that this is going to be formatted, is a div with the class of alert, and then if it's if we want it to be red, it'll be alert danger. If we want it to be green, it'll be alert success, like that, and then we'll have whatever the message in here. Okay, so we want to build this from scratch in JavaScript, okay, and insert it into the DOM. So we have our div. Next thing we'll do is add our classes. So let's take that div and say class name, and we want the class. I'm going to put in some backticks here. And remember what I showed you, it has a class of alert, and then whether it's alert danger, alert whatever, but we're going to pass that in here with the class name. So let's just put in our variable syntax and put in our class name. We could even do this. This might be a better thing to do, is to just do alert dash, so that way we can either pass in success or danger instead of alert dash success, alert dash danger. It's up to you. Doing this stuff, there's so many different variations of how you could do it. If you see something that I do that you don't like and you would rather do it a different way, by all means, go ahead and do that. Next thing we want to do is add the text. So we're going to take that div and we want to append child, meaning we want to put something in the div. And we want text, so this has to be at what's called a text node, and we can do that by using document.create text node. and the text is going to be the message that's passed in, okay, right here. All right, next thing we want to do is we need to start to figure out how to insert it, and we're going to actually grab the parent element, which is the container, because where I want to put it is, let's see, we have our container div right here, and then we have our h1. So I actually want to put it right here. This is where the div should go. So to do that, let's create a container, and we'll set that to document.querySelector. It has a class of container. All right, and then let's get the form. So we'll say form equals document.querySelector, and the form has an ID of book form. Okay, and then we want to insert the alert. So I'm going to take the container, which is a parent, and I'm going to say insert before, and I want to insert before the div. I'm sorry, I want to insert the div before the form. Okay, and it's kind of weird the way that these methods work, or the way that we have to do this, but we just need a parent element, which we use the container, and we want to use insert before for our div that we want to insert, and we want it to go before the form. So again, looking at our HTML here, I want to put it right here. Okay, so the container is the parent, and I said insert before the form. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's see. So let's try it. Let's save it, and we need to call it somewhere because right now we just have the method. So let's go back down to our error here, and instead of just doing the standard JavaScript alert, let's actually say UI.showAlert, and we have our message being passed in. So let's make this an error message, and remember the class for Bootstrap, alert-danger, but we already put alert dash, so we'll just say danger. And let's save that, and let's try it. There we go, fill in all fields, and it's red. If we put success here, it's green. And there's other ones as well. There's like info, that would be blue. So there we go. Just let's put it back to danger. So that's all set. Now, if we keep it the way it is, this is just going to stay here. Okay, if I keep doing it, there's just going to keep adding. So I want it to go away after 3 seconds. So let's go back up to the show alert, and let's say make we'll say vanish in 3 seconds. If you want to change the number of seconds, you can do that. But let's do set timeout. So set timeout actually takes in a function. You can do function if you want, but again, I'm going to use arrow functions. So let's say we want to, wait a minute, yeah, document dot, and we want to select the alert. So document dot query selector. Anything that has the class of alert, then we want to remove it. So dot remove, and then there's a second parameter to set timeout. So the first is the function, the second is the number of milliseconds. So I'm going to say 3000, which is 3 seconds. All right, so let's save this and let's try it. We'll add book with no fields, and there it goes. After 3 seconds, it disappears. So you're not going to get flooded with these alert messages, and it's not going to just stay there. Good. So let's see the next thing. I want a message after we add a book as well. So let's see. Let's yeah, when we add a book, so we pass the validation, and then we instantiate a book, we add it to the UI, we clear the fields. So you know what I'll do is right before we clear the fields, let's show success message. So we can simply do UI.showAlert. Okay, wherever we want to show an alert now, we can simply do this. And we'll just say book added. And for the class name, let's do success. So now let's just quickly add a book in here, and there we go, book added. It should go away. Good. So let's also do it when we delete, because right now if I delete a book, it doesn't do anything. So I'm going to just copy this, and let's go down to remove a book, and we'll put this, yeah, we'll put this right after the delete book. And let's say book removed. So now if I delete a book, we get book removed. Good. So we're at the point where we can do everything in our UI. We can add, we can remove, but it's not getting persisted to anywhere. So now we're going to start to deal with the storage. Now the store class is just for that, for storing in local storage and retrieving, removing. It's not for anything to do in the UI. We've handled that already. Okay, you want to separate your functionality. So let's go up to the store class, and well, let's create the store class. And we're basically going to have what are we going to have? Three different methods really. One is going to be to get books. I'm just going to write them out right now. So we have get books, we have add book, and that's going to take in a book. And then we have remove book. All right, and one thing we need to do is make sure that these are static so we can call them directly without having to instantiate the store class. Okay, and then I'm gonna create these methods. I'm gonna add the logic, and then we'll implement them after. And there's not gonna be too much here. I mean, local storage stores different, basically key value pairs. We're only gonna be we're gonna have an item called books, which is gonna be a string version of our entire array of books. You can't store objects in local storage. It has to be a string. So before we add it to local storage, we have to stringify it, and then when we pull it out, we have to parse it. So let's go ahead and for get books, we're going to just initialize a variable called books, and we need to check to see if there's a current book item in local storage. So we're going to say if local storage dot get item. Okay, that's a method that's attached to local storage. We want to see if there's an item called books. Now, to check this, we want to say if it's equal to null. So basically, we're saying if there is no item of books, then we want to take that books variable we just initialized, and we just want to set it to an empty array since there's no books. Else, if there is something found in the books item, then we're going to set that books to local storage dot get item books. Now the problem here is it's going to be stored as a string, so what we need to do is we actually need to run this through a json.parse method so that we can actually use it as a regular JavaScript array of objects. And then we need to return it ultimately. So down here we need to return whatever is in books. All right, so save that. So to add a book is really easy. We just need to first of all get the books from local storage. Now we can do that just by using store.getBooks. Right, and then we just need to push on whatever is passed in here as a book. We can just push onto it. So we'll say books.push, and we'll push on that book. All right, then we just basically need to reset it to local storage. So we'll say local storage, and then we can use set item, and the item we're setting is books, and we're setting books. Now the problem here is, like I said, local storage is strings. Right now books is an array of objects. So the solution to this is just to wrap this books in json.stringify. That way it can actually get added. All right, so pretty simple. That will add a book. Now to remove a book, we're going to remove it by its ISBN because that should be unique. We're using that kind of like an ID or like a primary key. So again, we have to get the books. So const books equals store dot get books. And then what we're going to do is loop through them using a for each. So for each, we're going to call each one book, and then we also have the index available to us. And then we just want to check to see if the current book that's being looped through, that's being iterated through, if the ISBN matches the one that's passed in for remove book. So book.isbn, if that is equal to the ISBN that's passed in, then we'll simply slice it out of the array. So we can say books. We're actually going to use the splice method. So we'll say splice, and to know where we need to splice it, we have the index available to us. So index, and then we're only splicing one. So that should actually remove it. Now, right now, it has nothing to do with local storage. This is just our books, you know, the data we pulled. Now we need to reset local storage with that book removed. So let's say local storage dot get item, I'm sorry, set item, because we're setting it, set item. The item we're setting is books, and we want to pass in books, but we have to stringify it. So JSON dot stringify our books and put it into local storage, and that's it. Those are our methods. So we'll save this, and obviously we've only created these methods, we haven't actually implemented them yet. So we're going to go down to our events here and figure out where we need to implement them. So actually, you know what? The first thing we'll do is get rid of our dummy data, because right now what we're seeing here is just this dummy data. So I'm going to completely get rid of this. And now we can simply set our books to our store method of get books, because that will reach into local storage and get them for us and return them. So let's save, and notice there's nothing there, which is correct because we haven't added any to local storage. So now let's go down to the bottom where we actually add a book. You can see right here we're adding it to the UI. So now let's add book to, we'll just say add book to store. So store dot add book, and then we're going to pass in book. All right, so now what I'll do is go over here and I'll say book 1, John Doe, and add. Okay, we get book added. Now right now I can reload and notice that it's not going anywhere because it's actually in local storage. And another way we can test is by opening our console, going to the application tab, and there right here, if you go down to local storage and you hit your local host, you'll see books as the key, and as the value you have just one big string which is formatted as an array of objects. All right, so it's being stored there as a string, and when we pull it out, we're parsing it as JSON and we're dealing with it. All right, so last thing is the delete, because if I delete, it works in the UI, but if I reload, it comes back. So we'll need to go down to where we remove a book. Excuse me. Let me just put a comment for this one, because we're remove book from UI. Now we need to remove book from the store. So we'll simply say store dot remove book. Now this is a little difficult because our remove book takes in the ISBN, right? If we go up to our store class, remove book takes in the ISBN, and we need to get it from here. Now remember, when we click the delete button, that is targeting the delete button, right? And then we use that, let's see, if we go up to UI, we use that to pass into the EL, and then we do our thing. But we actually need to pass in the ISBN here. So what we can do is get our e.target. That's going to give us the link itself that we click. Then we need to navigate to the parent element, because the parent element is going to be the TD, right? So if we look at the structure of this link, which is right here, the parent is the TD. We need to get to here. So what we're doing is traversing the DOM. To get to here, we need to go up to this TD, and there's a method we can use called previous element sibling that will get us here. And then to get the inner text, we could use inner text, or we could use text content. So let's do that. Let's say e.target.parent element, and then previous it's previous element sibling, and then we want the text it's actually text content, like that. That should give us the ISBN, and then that will be passed into remove book. So let's save, and let's X and reload, and now it's gone. Okay, so now we can actually add stuff to local storage and delete it. Let's just try it one last time. Okay, so now it's in local storage. I can delete. We have one left. If I reload, it's still there. All right, so that's it, guys. I hope you like this little project. And again, if you're interested in stuff like this, I do have a 21-hour course called Modern JavaScript from the Beginning. I'll put a link in the description with a promo code. And that's it. Thanks, and I will see you next time.